Good evening. I'm a little bit later than usual. Just had a bit of Wi-Fi connection problems. Not sure if anyone's listening, but I'm here on my usual Sunday with a little bit of inspiration, talking to different community leaders or talking about community leadership in general. I've had the good fortune of interviewing some really wonderful guests. I spoke to 18-year-old Gabriel not long ago, and back in May, I think. And then last week, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to the leaders, the chair and the vice chair of Wolfen Forest Women's Network, an amazing, amazing network of women that are leading initiatives in the community. And today, my special guest today is Maruf. I'll be talking to my son, who's 22 years old. The reason why I thought it would be really, really insightful to have a conversation with Maruf is because Maruf's just come back from a really great 10 months work placement in Japan, and that during a pandemic. And I thought it would be really insightful to hear from him about his experience, but also going back to perhaps his earlier times when he was volunteering in the community, and what kind of impact that's had on him as a young person, and what kind of, advice could he give to other young people. So I'm really fascinated to be interviewing my own son today, this evening. I hope you can join me. If you are here and you are listening, please let me know that you are listening so that I know who is listening from which part of the world. It'd be really great if you could give us any feedback, or if you have any questions generally, we welcome that. So I'm gonna, without much ado, invite Maruf to come in. Maruf, you here? Hello.
Hello, Mom.
Hello, Mom. This is not conventional. Anyone who's listening, this is not conventional. But then again, anyone who knows me well enough knows I'm not a conventional type of person. So I really wanted to invite Maruf in. Maruf, introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so my name is Maruf Ali. I recently graduated from a master's degree and a degree in physics, and I'm just currently taking a bit of a break, doing some part-time work, and in pursuit of a PhD. So.
Okay, and what are you planning to do your PhD in?
Well, generally within physics, I enjoy the theoretical side. So hopefully a PhD in theoretical physics, and more specifically, maybe something like theoretical nuclear physics or some type of quantum mechanical based topic.
Okay. Just for the listeners, anyone listening, any young people in particular, a lot of young people have the dilemma of not knowing what they want to do or pursue as a career path, or even pursue education. And I think because of the pandemic, it's a lot more challenging now. I speak to a lot of young people then, they talk about, feeling divided between whether they pursue education or go into work or entrepreneurship or apprenticeship. What would you say are your reasons for wanting to pursue a doctorate?
Well, first and foremost, I feel very blessed to actually know what I want to do, because I know that everyone's on a different stage in terms of how close they are to knowing, I guess, sort of what their purpose would be. It's hard to tell someone, or I guess to give advice to someone as to how they can know what they want to do, because I suppose it's something that sort of blossoms organically, and it comes with time, which depends on each individual. But I guess if I was to like give some words of encouragement, I would say that no, I guess to make a right decision in your life, you have to know yourself quite well. So there's a lot of self-reflection with regards to your abilities and your interests. Something might sort of eventually come up. But I think an important thing is to not give too much pressure, or not give into or succumb to too much pressure, and sort of let that, yeah, come to you naturally.
How did you decide physics was your thing? Was it when you were doing your GCSEs, A levels, or degree?
Yeah, so I mean during GCSEs, near the end of secondary school, I knew that I loved maths and I had an interest in science. And I was actually talking to my cousins about this the other day. Um, Within the breakdown of the sciences, I was least able in the topic that I found most interesting. So from physics to chemistry to biology I was the strongest in, physics I was the weakest in. But I think the topics that we learned within physics just sounded more interesting. And then after doing physics and chemistry during A levels, I grew. How can I say? I got closer and closer just to that the idea of wanting to study physics more. And I guess by the degree time, it was good to speak to a lot of people that actually studied, so I can get more into an insight as to what it actually entails. And then I guess you take a bit of a risk because you don't know exactly whether you're going to like something until you actually do it. So the main point was that I really enjoyed maths, but I didn't want to do just maths because it would be too abstract for me. I did want a bit of application, and physics sounded interesting. And I guess it's also quite um, motivating to see a lot of like sort of I guess famous physicists. So for me, there was a physicist, or there is a physicist named Jamal Khalili, which is I guess is a bit well known in media, and he makes documentaries and stuff. And he's actually the professor at the university that I went to, so that helped out.
Mm. Just taking a step back, listening to your journey, taking a step back to your A levels. We all learn from what we think or what we hope isn't always what happens.
Yeah.
So tell us what happened that actually may have been a major stumbling block sort of in your career or your education path during the time of your A levels.
Well,
Were there?
I guess that would be the way I would assume that's directed towards my results because I got a lot lower than I was predicted, and I actually got rejected by my insurance uni, which means I got rejected by both my firm and insurance uni. You
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
I'm
that?
talking about that, but I think also because if young people are listening, quite often what happens is we come against a barrier and it becomes such a huge barrier. Sometimes we don't always have the resilience at that age to pick ourselves up and carry on. But like what happened was not within your own control, but you had an accident, didn't you? And yeah,
Yeah,
just tell us
I
a
was
bit.
well, I was predicted. Well, I did A levels in maths, physics, and chemistry, and predicted 1A star and 2As. And there was an injury that I had with my hand, unforeseen, and that occurred about sort of near the end of the first year of college. It basically continued for a few months and took about one third of my second year of college. So that drastically reduced my chances of attaining those predicted grades. So I ended up getting 5 grades lower than expected. The A in maths and 2 C's in physics and chemistry. Um, Usually on a one results day, everyone gets the results about 9 a.m. or wherever you go to college, and then you get the results. Uh, a lot of the times, well, I think everyone also gets an email before the results. Usually it might be email from the uni that you got a place in or you didn't get a place in. So on the morning, I got an email from Surrey, which is my insurance. UCL was the firm, saying that I didn't get the place. So immediately I knew that I lost both my chances of getting into a uni uh, that I applied for without even knowing my grades at that point. So after getting the grades, during that time, I saw I was I saw a lot of people that were in similar situations. Some people were crying, and then I guess there was a moment where I basically could have just, how do I say, go home straight away, go into bed, and then just do nothing for the rest of the day, or I could see the next best option and sort of persist through that and create another different outcome or like a different path, I guess. And yeah, cutting the story short, I mean, you're with me, so and I'm grateful for your help. What happened was that we emailed directly to the professor that I was talking about previously, and on his behalf, we got a response saying that the university was willing to reconsider my application, even despite the fact that I was about 3 or 4 grades lower than the actual requirement to study at the uni. So I was very lucky, but not only was I lucky, I mean, it's a combination of luck and my own persistence. So I could have not have got the opportunity that I did get, but I did because I guess partly I created that for myself,
Mm.
and other people can create that for themselves too. Just it requires that, I guess, that patience and just being determined.
That's the point I'm trying to get at. Show us which hand you cut.
Yeah, yeah. So the right palm. I don't know. Maybe they might be able to see.
Okay, so you had stitches, yeah?
Yeah,
And how long was your hand in cast?
I think it was about 3 months. It was definitely a long time. And even when it was out of the cast, I had to go to the physiotherapist, very often and sort of bring it back into functioning by doing the different exercises and whatever. And so for a long time, I actually had I forgot what the word is, but there's someone that writes for you.
Mm.
Um, so I even did like mock exams in a separate room in the library where someone would come and they would sit next to me and I would have to explain to them what to write. Of course, I got extra time for that because it's very difficult to explain to someone how to answer a physics or a maths question in a way
Mm.
that you want them to answer it for you. So yeah, that was an experience.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously now with the A-level results just come out recently, a lot of people will have varied results. What kind of advice would you give based on your own experience? What would you give? What advice would you give to A-level students at the moment?
Well, firstly, I would say be grateful or congrat congratulate yourself on your result no matter what. Um, Sort of acknowledge the effort that you did put in, whether that might be a little or a lot. The result is your result, and you should be proud of yourself. Um, if it's not as good, it hasn't reached your standard. Because I know personally, for me, I have quite a high expectations of myself. Even if sort of my family might be okay with what I got, a lot of the times I have a higher expectation. So I understand a lot of able students that might feel that way. Um, what I'd say is, I mean, it's it sort of seems logical and makes sense, but there is a lot of merit to it. But the point is that what's done is done, and how can I say? I guess one of the one of the methods to becoming, I guess, quite mentally strong is to it's easier said than done, but it's to focus on only what is in your own control. And that's usually what you can do now. Now being after a time where you did something that you might have regretted, like, not doing as well in an exam. Um, with After my sort of appalling performance, I still got into a university where I had the chance to do an internship all the way in Japan for my master's. And that's something that I can say proudly while doing a dissertation during the pandemic, which I achieved the first for. I didn't get first overall in my degree. I got 2-1, but I'm still very happy because I got through that. So the to cut it short, the only way that you're going to really benefit just after a big moment like this, like getting a result, is to focus on what's next. Don't neglect, I guess, don't neglect what's just happened, but sort of process it, acknowledge it, appreciate it, and then move on in a, how do I say, sort of going with the flow.
A bit like maybe what you did with, okay, you got the results and it was upsetting and you weren't happy, but you then tried to persist and still get to your next step. So I guess there may be students that are disappointed, but do they give it up or do they carry on? So I guess it was more about encouraging people around the resilience side of things, because your example is a really good one.
Yeah.
um, and something I know you talked about Japan, but we'll go into that in a minute. First, I had another question, and that was around how did you get your first job? Because I think that's a really
Okay.
creative and interesting tip that you must share with other young people.
Well, so from what I remember, during the time being 18 years old, like every other 18-year-old, I was looking for a job. Now it seemed like the only way would have been retail. So I went to a big mall and I went to literally every single shop, just giving in my CV. Uh, some some shops said that they would respond to me. I basically got zero responses. And one of my mates at college, so yeah, it was like this was just after college. He mentioned about posting an ad on Gumtree, which hopefully everyone's aware of. Gumtree is just a website kind of similar to eBay, and um, I posted an ad as a student looking for work, and I tried to make it sort of look professional, and I one I just a few days after, so as opposed to the retail where I got no responses after weeks, uh, only after a few days of posting the Gumtree ad, I got a call from someone saying that they'd want to put me to do some security work. I never sort of, how do I say, I never even thought of that as something that I would do just for part-time work. Like this was, during summer before I started university, and I thought, why not? It was a very, how do I say, it was quite a lot compared to what I expected, and so I wanted to earn as much as I could. They ended up being 12-hour shifts, and I worked 5 days a week for 2.5 months. And using that, I managed to cover my accommodation for the first year. So the
Brilliant.
point was that it was the Gumtree ad that wasn't something that I would have thought of doing, and the job that I got wasn't even a job that I thought of doing. So it sort of came from nowhere, and I'm grateful. And now I'm still doing security after 3-4 years, and it's a good part-time work.
So obviously you put an ad on Gumtree and you said it was what led you to your first job. What did you write in your ad? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly, but I basically tried to make it sound as professional as formal as possible. I put in, like, I think I attached the CV, and I just put in like college student looking to do um, this part-time work. Uh,
College student looking for part-time work, no experience.
that's the one. Yeah, no
And
experience.
how many people contacted you after that ad?
Well, it was 2 people in 2 days. There was another one about doing some like carrying computers and stuff at some electronic company, but it didn't really sound as good as the security one, and security was a bit more higher pay.
Once you got your first one, then obviously there was no need to chase up all the others. But it's a very, very
No.
interesting way of looking for work by putting an ad out there. And I
The
think,
main point was just the photo. I took a nice photo of myself just to show that I'm legit, and a lot of people, I mean, didn't really do that. So it's not a lot of competition, you know. I don't know about now. Maybe more people know about it, but it felt like it was quite easy because I didn't do a lot. And the people who are from different, employers looking on Gumtree, they're probably just looking for someone who is seems genuine. That's sort of like they don't really have a high expectation, assuming this is an employer that is providing a job that requires no experience. So there's that too.
would you say generally, like when people see, I mean, because visibility is my big thing. Do you think when people actually see a picture of you or hear you, it makes you much more authentic, or are young people still uncomfortable with that, do you think?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Like a lot of people I talk to, whether it's an adult or a young person, they're not always comfortable about putting themselves out there, whether it's especially a photograph or filming or whatever. So
Ah,
obviously you just mentioned authenticity and how you think that the reason why you were picked out was because you put a photo of yourself. So do you think a lot of people still struggle with that kind of thing, or have you overcome that yourself?
well, it seems like what you were saying is that people they don't want to share too much information, like in terms of giving the photo online.
Yeah, like like people sometimes feel uncomfortable, like they don't want to show off, if you like, their photo or film or video. I get this all the time. I mentor people that say, oh, but I don't really want to put myself out there because I feel like awkward.
Oh,
But you've just given me an example of where you got picked up because there was a photo of you. So I'm just touching up on authenticity. If you were employing someone or you were thinking of, would you be looking for someone maybe who is a little bit more visible?
well, I guess there's like a level of empathy in this. So if I'm looking at the from the point of view of an employer, what would I want to see in an adult for someone looking for work? And that's what I did. So
Mm,
it's just like I had a certain goal that I wanted to achieve. So I did whatever I thought was best to achieve that goal. That's it.
mm.
you know? Yeah.
Mm. So young people these days, a lot of young people are struggling to get themselves on the job market.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the time when you were doing the security work yourself, you also encouraged other young people that you knew to get into that work. So what would you advise young people that are really struggling to find work at the moment?
I mean, the first thing is that it's tough due to the pandemic. So it's sort of, you know, it's hard for me to give advice that hasn't already been said and advice that would be useful in this context. But one thing that I have noticed is that a lot of people might not realize which jobs to apply for that's better for them. Like perhaps this is me assuming, perhaps a lot of young people apply for the same jobs, which includes what I first did, which was predominantly retail or perhaps working in the food industry, like a fast food restaurant or whatever. I, yeah, or yeah, like little, even like shops or whatever. Um, but I think the issue might be is that everyone applies to those same jobs. So if there's so much competition, you can't expect to get to guarantee, to get a job that is guaranteed. So I can only speak from this perspective, and that is that the job that I'm doing specifically is a job that isn't, let's say, it's not as competitive because it's not really, doesn't really come across as a fun job, but it is always in demand because it is always needed. And I mean, the more like the longer that I've been doing security, the more I'm seeing more young people are discovering security. So to be a security officer, you actually need training. But prior to being a security guard, you can do what's known as stewardship. So to be a steward, you could steward at a football stadium, or you can steward at some festival or an event at a park. And they're quite easy to get. They're jobs that are quite easy to get. So I can only recommend a job that I know that isn't as competitive. And so based on that, I sort of make my own interpretation, and that is that jobs that are more competitive, are going to be harder to get, and maybe a lot of people only know about the jobs that are competitive. So the advice is to look for jobs that are not as obvious, and you probably have a lot of a better time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the obvious and biggest reasons why a lot of young people struggle is lack of experience.
Exactly.
So obviously, one of the things that a lot of young people don't realize, and we certainly don't pick it up in school, is volunteering. So you've been doing volunteering. Share with
Yeah.
us
I
examples of
mean,
the kind of volunteering you did, which was maybe similar or transferable skills in those volunteering jobs, roles.
I would say even if the transferable skills are not obvious, any type of volunteering is always helpful. I get as young people, I guess we're always told that you need something to put on your CV so you can stand out. You sort of have to sell yourself in a way that employers will be able to see value in your profile. So I did volunteering at a local community center, and I did that for quite a bit of time, doing all these different events. And I also did volunteering for like how
At
do I say
uni?
the sponsored, yeah, like sponsored treks. A famous one is, well, a popular one is to do the Mount Snowdon trek, and I did that twice. Um,
Tell us about the one you did, because that one's really interesting because it's really challenging. You did one that was by night, was it?
oh
Like,
yes,
yeah.
so the second one. This is with the Islamic Society at my university. Um, and an important thing to mention is that you didn't have to be Muslim. This was open to everyone. But the I joined with the Islamic Society to do a sponsored trek, and it was a sunrise trek. So we left, I suppose, yeah, we left late at night for the coach. And by the time we got there, the plan was to sort of reach near the peak at sunrise time. Because this was during the winter, it was too dangerous to go all the way to the top because it was icy, and you couldn't get to the top unless you had those boots with spikes in them. But that was a very, very insightful experience. Just doing a trek up a mountain is quite beautiful. I think for anyone if they push themselves to do it. But to do it at sunrise was a cherry on top. And yeah, it was a really good experience. And not only was that just a nice experience, I managed to get a bit of sponsorship that goes towards a charity. So that's, I guess, like uh, how do I say, a morally good thing to do, a deed. And on top of that, it's something to put on the CV. So when you go to a potential employer, they will see that you're doing other types of activities or extracurricular activities outside your own education. So just becoming more of a well-rounded individual.
I remember at the time it was more than 40 students, and you all managed to raise more than £20,000 for Islamic relief.
Oh yeah, it was surprising the amount of money. I mean, to be fair, I got a lot of help, but I didn't expect so many people to actually be willing to sponsor that much money. But it goes to show that everyone has a heart, and if you're able to articulate your cause well, then you'll be able to get a lot of sponsorship.
I say that's only 50%. Articulate your cause and supporting your cause is only 50%. I speak
Mm,
as a fundraiser. The other
mm,
50% are your connections and your support network.
yeah,
People will donate and people will help you fundraise because they want to see you succeed. Which I know at the time, I remember you were very shocked. It was like, can't believe
yeah,
that many people, they know
yeah.
they're giving it to a good cause, firstly. And secondly, they know and they want you to succeed. And that's the joy of fundraising. What a lot of people don't realize it's not you, it's your entire support network that help you succeed. Alone we can only go so far, and remember there was 40 of you, and because there was 40 of you, your reward or what you got at the end, your outcome was multiplied by 40, and that reached you to a phenomenal goal, more than £20,000. That's a lot of money to raise for charity.
No, when you mentioned the support network, that was actually a good point because it made me realize that everyone that sponsors, when they see sort of their contribution in action, they are also a part of that action. So it also builds that sense of identity within them. So that's very nice.
Yeah, it's almost like we're sharing the outcome. It's almost
Exactly.
like the success is shared by all. It's like when you get to the top and you come down, everyone's gone to the top and come down with you, everyone who
Yeah.
has sponsored. So it's a really nice feeling when you look at it that way. I'm going to go back to, like obviously, quite a few young people in the community. And I guess I just wanted to ask you what you think the biggest barriers are to, why is it that a lot of young people don't consider volunteering?
Okay. Why is it that a lot of young people don't consider volunteering? Well, without sort of trying to and validate their own experiences. I would say that it's probably because they don't see the merit within volunteering, and usually, I guess volunteering is never really a bad thing to do. You can't lose out by volunteering. Um, so the perspective that doesn't see merit in volunteering is usually one that's more of a surface level perspective. So a question that would come to mind straight away, uh, I would say, looking at the point of view of someone, a young person not willing to volunteer, would be what do I benefit out of it? And usually it's not clear what they benefit out of it. If anything, they're giving away and nothing's really coming back directly or in short term. So that's probably the main reason why.
That
It's
that's
a use of time where you're not getting money out of it. So a perfect example is the decisions made during, let's say, out of education periods. So um, during summer holidays, there's a choice where if you can't find an internship, usually, so the first thing is to apply for an internship. Usually, everyone wants to get some sort of paid experience that they can put on their CV towards their job ultimately after doing the degree. Or at A level, it'll be towards the end of A level, just having something else on top of your A levels. However, if if you can't get an internship, which is directly related to what you're studying, a lot of young people would go straight to, okay, I'm just going to work at the local cafe or just do a part-time job instead, because at least I can save up some money. But there's also a third option that most people, I don't want to say most because I don't know most people, but I would say that a lot of young people would choose that doesn't choose, and that is volunteering, that third option. So I think that hopefully that answers it. That whole point is that the third option doesn't have as much benefits on the surface, and
mm.
that's why they don't choose it because it doesn't earn the money.
I often hear people saying that there's not enough opportunities. I feel personally, I feel that parents don't see the value in volunteering as well. And so therefore children that are quite young are not encouraged into it. Obviously, I work in the charity sector, so naturally I'm going to encourage my children to volunteer. But opportunities everywhere. They say there's not enough opportunities, but young people, if they don't understand the value. So for that, for example, any young people listening to what you've just talked about, because one of the other reasons why it's not visible is because there's no young people like yourself or others who have done volunteering who are actually using a platform like YouTube or LinkedIn like we are doing today to say, look, this is great, and my example is XYZ. Because you did volunteering, you may have done work, but your work wasn't related to your volunteering. However, your work placement in Oxford, how old were you and what was that in relation to?
Oh, well, I think it'll be good to mention first that after my first year of university, I wasn't experienced enough to be qualified for an internship because I'm going against people that are more experienced than me. So what I did was I actually just went straight to one of the lecturers in the department and I asked him, could I do maybe some research for you, even if it's voluntary, it doesn't have to be paid. It's just about getting the experience. And one of my lecturers were kind enough to sort of let me contribute a bit to the actual research that they were doing themselves. Um, so that was something to put on the CV, and that counts as volunteering. Now, that on top of the other volunteering that I did, I would, I would assume made my application strong enough to get the internship, which I did attain in my second year. So after the second year, I got uh, in summer internship to work for a research organization known as STFC, or Science and Technologies Facilities Council, and they collaborate internationally and nationally. Internationally with like big research labs like CERN, if you recognize that. And I worked in the particle physics department, and I actually asked my supervisor one day how I got the place because it was about 1 in 9. So I mean, clearly I beat 8 other people, which I'm very proud of. And I asked my supervisor, and he said he didn't give a lot of information, but one thing did stuck out, and he was just like, "Yeah, it looked unique." And I mean, how would you define unique? I would say being unique was just the fact that I had different things on my CV. So it doesn't have to always be directly related, but there was something of substance in my application, and that came from my willingness to do volunteering.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
That's really insightful. I'd actually almost forgot that. But you mentioned the word unique, and in society in general, most, especially young people, when they're going through teenage years and maybe later on when they're adulting, everything we do is around trying to fit in.
Oh, we're socialized to do the opposite.
Yeah, everything we do is we try and fit in, but like you just mentioned that you stood out because you were unique. A lot of adults don't have the courage to bring out the uniqueness in them. So most people would rather be part of a flock as opposed to really stand out. I know I'm proud of the fact that I'm different and I consider myself unique to myself. But isn't it interesting how everything changes when we change our mindset? Because on the one hand, we're competing maybe with hundreds of applications, and the one thing that really makes us stand out is our uniqueness. You have to be different and you
I
have to
mean,
be unique to
I
be
would,
picked.
I would also say that like unique isn't always good. There is like a good uniqueness and a bad uniqueness.
Okay.
So, just something to bear in mind.
Tell me more. What
Well,
do
I
you
mean,
mean?
you can do. I mean, a bad uniqueness is to go outside the crowd, sort of. How do I say, to sort of satisfy an ego and not really do something productive for society, or nothing that isn't really virtuous. But a good uniqueness would be, so for example, if I were to be so bold to say that I had good uniqueness, I would say that even though the stuff in my CV uh, was different and unique, the good uniqueness came from the fact that even though it was different, there were transferable skills there. So there was something that linked them. There was a chain there, and that chain from A to B to C, from what I had to what I needed, and that still being fulfilled, even though it was different. That was how I was able to still achieve. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then that is what the uniqueness isn't necessarily how we define ourselves. It's how others see us. Uniqueness is not something that like a very, very experienced interviewer will see it in your CV. It's not something you have to say. Is visible to others, and that uniqueness comes through when we talk, when we, based on our action, that our action speaks for us. So that's quite interesting, and exactly as you said, it would have been picked up, and it always gets picked up. I know when I'm on an interview panel I'm not. Hi, Hamza. Hamza's listening to us. There's a comment here. Very insightful, great interview. Thank you, Hamza, for your lovely comment. I have to say that if I'm on an interview panel, and I might have like three candidates, all similar academic achievement, all similar kind of experiences, there will always be something unique to the one who gets the job. There'll always be something very unique. Can't tell you what that uniqueness is, but sometimes when you have that conversation, and this is why people get called to interviews, because when you talk, the uniqueness comes out. The more you talk to the candidate, the more you kind of understand how they stand out. Just going back to your Japan, I know I'm conscious we've been talking for 45 minutes.
Yeah, no
Last
worries.
thing I want to ask you about is your Japan experience. There would have been times when, and I know you don't like to say this in public, but it's what might sound extremely vulnerable to you might be very helpful to somebody else, because we all make
Mm.
assumptions. Now, there were times in Japan, although you talk about how wonderful it was and everything, where perhaps you found it challenging, like getting lost somewhere and not being able to communicate. So share something with us that was quite a little bit challenging and unexpected for you while you were in Japan.
Okay. Well, so for 5 days a week, I was at a lab doing research in experimental nuclear physics. And during the weekend, usually on a Saturday, I would go. So I live in a prefecture called Saitama, and I would go to travel and sort of journey, explore through nature because it's known for having beautiful nature. And Sunday, I would usually go Tokyo and then see what Tokyo has. So on the Saturdays, I would try at least every other week to climb a mountain because there are so many mountains and forests and valleys and parks as well. Um, I think the reason why I did it partly was obviously it's nice, as a tourist, but also for my own sort of personal self development to do something, I guess, that was quite tough and to endure through it and sort of struggle through it and make me sort of, I guess, stronger. Um, I made the decision, obviously, not to pick places that were too dangerous because I was living by myself. Um, and there was one time where I got lost in a mountain. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to get too stressed out. So, I mean, just to sort of put it into context, the important thing is that I was in a position where I felt a lot of fear and a lot of negative emotion. And so there's two decisions to make from there. You can either cower in fear, fly away, or you can fight and endure and then overcome. So it was very hard in certain moments, but I was able to, how do I say, so overcome these feelings of despair, and that helped me become stronger overall. And in general, it made things a lot easier and better for me because not only living in the pandemic, being on the other side of the world at 20, living by yourself for 10 months without much social interaction can be quite tough. But if you learn how to, I don't know, how to sort of take care of yourself in the right way, you can get through it. And then overall, life just becomes easier.
Yeah, that's thank you
Right?
for being a little bit open and honest about that. And mental health is a big struggle for many of us. I personally have struggled working from home and not seeing very many people. Always had concerns about, like obviously you being in another country, etc. But generally speaking, there's a lot of young people. There's a nation or where we are coming out of, being in a pandemic, being quite isolated. People have maybe the social interaction, the skills need to be relearnt, etc. Um, but any advice? Do you have any advice around that? Because obviously, it's not, mental health is not a problem or a diagnosis that can be just like have medicine and it's over. It's something that we will struggle with on and off throughout our lives, especially because you said at the beginning that you have high expectations of yourself, and that in
Yeah.
itself can you know cause quite a bit of struggle. So what would you say? I mean, anything that helps you personally, it would be nice for you to share so that other people listening could also maybe use or sort of follow a similar kind of, because I know you also do breathing exercises and was it Zen, you were part of Zen Society, so
Yeah.
what
Well,
tips?
firstly, I'd like to say that hopefully things are better now because, well, with the pandemic in general, I'd hope that, you know, less quarantine now and hopefully people get more chances for interacting with just other people, just talking in general. Because, as humans, we are social creatures. As for me personally, I mean, I had a few things that got me through Japan. Now, Japan overall was like a very insightful experience. There were many positives, and I usually talk about positives, but there were many negatives, and I had my own ways of uh, healthily dealing with it. The first one was a form of self-reflection, which we should all do in general. I think usually we don't, but the pandemic gave us a chance because when you're not well, if you're not talking or spending time with other people, you're just by yourself. Then reflection comes naturally. So I had my own diary that I'd write all my thoughts in, and it's quite a powerful thing to have your own diary. I mean, I remember we had it when we were really young in like primary school. Now that was never taken seriously, but I think it's something that we should all have for the entirety of our life, and it's something that you can share with other people if you like, or you can keep it to yourself. It doesn't matter. The whole point is that everything that you write in the diary are feelings, usually quite internalized. If you're able to express them out, they usually sort of, in a way, at least part of it disappears. So that makes it a bit easier. So that's the first one. The second thing from me personally, as you mentioned about Zen, at my university during this second, or it might have been the third year, no, second year, during the freshers, which is like an event where you you it's like near the beginning where you are introduced to all the different clubs and societies. I came across the Zen Society or Zen Soc, which is basically a meditation society, and I thought I'll give it a try. Now, the whole point about something like meditation is that it doesn't have any connotations or associations with religions. This is just something that sort of is good for all humans and on a neurophysiological level. So doing breathing exercises helped out. You know, anyone who does that whenever they're stressed out, I mean, it would help everyone, and it helped me definitely. And being in nature in Japan was very beautiful because I had a chance to combine that. Imagine being on the top of a mountain and just relaxing, or like in a forest. It was all very peaceful. So even though it was difficult to be on my own, it was also quite peaceful to be on my own. So self-reflection and Zen, those two probably the most important ones. There are more generic ones that I should also mention, even though it's obvious because sometimes you might forget. But it's hobbies. We all have hobbies, especially those who don't think they have hobbies. They just haven't discovered it themselves. You know, I play the piano. I play table tennis. I like to do some like card tricks as well. So just sticking to my hobbies and keeping myself busy. Now, busy doesn't mean to neglect those negative feelings inside, but being busy is like being productive. So it's a combination of keeping yourself busy in a healthy way, while still processing all of your emotions in the right way. Usually, a lot of mental health issues. This is my personal experience. Remember, I'm not anyone like I'm not a professional,
Hmm.
but I
No.
would say, I would say, just based on my own experiences, it seems like a lot of issues might occur due to the avoidance of suffering. So the avoidance of meeting with a really, really disturbing thought or feeling usually makes that feeling or thought worse. So if you acknowledge that, which basically I'm linking back to the reflection part, then it makes it a lot easier. So yeah, and obviously, there's stuff like talking to a professional, which everyone should always do at least once, because they're more likely know more about you than you do about you. So yeah,
Very insightful. Thank you, Maruf.
no
Um,
worries.
yeah, I hope we managed to dispel some myths for anybody who makes the assumption that Maruf Ali, with masters in physics, is someone who was born an A star student and only got through university because he got A star, A star, A star.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
not that smart.
Pardon? You
I'm
are
not. I'm not
smart.
that smart.
I do think you are smart, but that's my point, that people are a lot more smarter than they give themselves credit for. I mean, I'm certainly not someone who did exceptionally well, but I know I don't struggle now, and I've not struggled in any of my careers. But uh, I guess the point I'm trying to make is people make that assumption when they know of you, hear of you, or meet you, without knowing what you were up against. But also equally, people make the assumption sometimes before they even try something that they won't be able to do it. So
Yeah,
most people will say, "Oh no, that's far beyond my, expectations, going to Japan." But like, you may have thought like that, but you actually ended up going. So I guess what I'm saying is, I hope that we've managed to dispel some myths, that any young person who is at university is thinking of, like, doing a short stint in another country, doesn't actually feel like it's far beyond their expectations.
I wanted to mention something actually
Mm.
that you
Go on.
reminded me. I guess that also perhaps sort of everyone is sort of like a, how do I say, they're obedient to a narrative,
Mm.
but the thing is that narrative is sort of created by themselves.
Mm. Explain yourself, because that does not sound like easy
Oh,
to understand what
is
you
that not
just said.
clear?
Yeah, you go give an example. You can't just
Yeah,
summarize your philosophical thoughts.
yeah, no worries. I'm trying to make it clear with an example. So, how you said this is natural and there's nothing wrong with it, you know, and it's how a person will say that I can't do that. That's not me. This is too much, or like you said, above expectations, or outside expectations. A possible issue that can come out of that is that you've limited yourself because of the fact that you fulfilled the prophecy that you've created by yourself. So to say that this isn't you, you've already defined what you are, and because of that reason, you might not be able to do things that could actually improve yourself because you already made presumptions of who you are straight away from the beginning. So someone who they might want to be like they might want to be a, let's say, I don't know, a, a famous speaker, but then uh, actually no, that's not a good example. uh, Maybe inside someone wants to be famous for any certain reason, uh, but the steps towards becoming famous they're not willing to do because they don't see themselves doing those steps in the first place. So because of that, they've basically they're their own obstacle, and that's usually the case in a lot of the decisions that we make in life. That's just my own experience.
There's in the youth work world, there's a term for that. We call it the self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I completely understand what you said, uh, and I hope that our listeners have as well. But
Yeah,
also, I hope that our listeners feel inspired that if you can, with all the hurdles and all the obstacles you had up against you with the surgery in your hand, not be getting the right grades, etc., not even imagining that you would end up in Japan, but going there and coming back, who would have guessed there would be a pandemic? Surviving, I won't even say surviving, but like having a really good experience that will stay with you for life. If you could do that, others can also do it. So, like the advice you gave earlier about talking to professors at university, that could open doors. Maybe most students just go to university, do their thing, may not even think about, okay, let me ask a professor, can I help or contribute? Or can I volunteer? Most people may not even label that as volunteering, but it is. So that I hope like has been useful tips for anybody listening. Thank you for
there's
spending
one
your.
thing I wanted to
Mhm,
find out. One thing I just wanted to add as well.
mhm.
Uh, there are people that have done more than me and have endured more than me, and they've turned out all right. So you know, as humans, we have almost limitless potential. I just wanted to add that. People,
I hear you. I hear you and I believe you.
yeah,
We do have limitless potential, and many of my wonderful connections that actually watch this on LinkedIn will hopefully agree with us here. But often people need to see people like you, who might not be Einstein, actually talking about their experiences and sharing, which can be really uncomfortable, but we don't know the impact we have on others until we make ourselves more visible and we share our stories. So thank you for sharing all your stories because you had lots of stories today. Thank you.
yeah. We've gone over time, but no
Yeah.
worries.
We've done over time, but hopefully this will be coming useful to anybody who listens, anybody that hears what you have to say and finds it helpful to them, to their future. I would say we've fulfilled our purpose.
All right,
Thank you.
sounds good to me.
All right then. Take care. 1 hour, 4 minutes.
All right.
Bye.